Hey everyone, welcome back, and today I'm going to be doing what if Kazakhstan decides to form an empire. So, Kazakhstan decides to go imperial, and then they decide that they don't want to be landlocked anymore. They do have access to the Caspian Sea, but they don't have to the ocean. So, they decide that they would send ultimatums over to Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. So, with Tajikistan and Turkmenistan denying the request, Uzbekistan would accept since they don't want to be destroyed, and also Kyrgyzstan. And then with these two going to the Kazakhs, the other two finally go over to the Kazakhs. So, with them being fully under the Kazakhstani control, they decide that they would want more land. And now they have an even bigger coastline with the Caspian Sea. It's not enough. So they decide that they would want to go after more countries. But after a few years of militarizing and being more economic, more powerful, they decide that they would want to go after Afghanistan. So, after the troops are being lined up, they start entering Afghanistan, skipping all of the mountainous range, and then eventually Afghanistan falls. And then since they're there, might as well declare war on Pakistan. But Pakistan does liberate a lot of Afghanistan, and then another front goes in, encircling them, and then making them fall. Their capital falls, and then eventually they fall. So let's look at the peace treaty. Okay, so here's the peace treaty with Afghanistan and Pakistan. We see that they're both being annexed. So what they do next is that they can't go after Russia because they're very strong. They can't go after China because they have more people, and they can't go after India because a lot more people. So, with only one choice, they go over to Iran. So, they declare war on Iran, and then soon, the troops start entering. And with already threatening their capital, they're trying to push them back, which they managed to do, but that led to a massive pushback from the Kazakhs, pushing them all the way up to their coastline, and then trying to encircle them around the Caspian Sea. So then next, this part was able to regroup, and then next, their capital falls, and then eventually they surrender. And then, since they're there, might as well declare war on Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. So then next, they start advancing, eventually capturing their coast from Azerbaijan, and then their capital falls, and then Armenia falls, and then Georgia is now being supported by Turkey, which also joins the war, which they are able to cut them off and then wiping them off, liberating Iran's capital. But then also, that's backfired, and then they're pushed back to their border. So then now, they're capturing more of Azerbaijan again, and then Armenia, and then soon, Georgia falls. Then next, Turkey is able to push back, and then liberating half of Georgia and a little bit of Armenia. But then soon, it's back to a stalemate. And then, a few years later go by, it's still a stalemate, with very to little no difference. But then eventually, the Turkish is able to make the front line better, and that makes the Kazakhs go in a little bit deeper. But then, Turkey sues for a peace treaty, and the Kazakhs accept. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty. Here we see that Turkey and Kazakhstan is having any border dispute against Georgia. So so the Kazakhstan want to annex all of Georgia, but Turkey wants to annex them for economic aid. So what the Kazakhs decide to do is that Turkey has to give up a lot of land for them to receive Georgia. So eventually, Turkey accepts it. Turkey annexes all of Georgia, while the Kazakhs annex a little bit of Turkey. So, with this, they decide that they might as well declare war on Iraq and Syria. So, with Syria weakened after their civil war, they start in a massive front in Syria, eventually capturing their coast, capturing their capital. They surrender. Then next, with Iraq all alone, they also surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty with Syria and Iraq, but with the Kurdistans wanting to become independent, I think this is the borders of the Kurdistan. I mean, it's probably not, but this is the best I could do, probably. So, what the Kazakhstan decides to do is that they don't give them this area, they give them a little bit more. So, they decide to give them a little bit more access to the ocean, but they would have to give up some territory. So, now, Kazakhstan decides to give them a little bit of independence by turning them into a puppet state. So then next, they would want them to get more land for more ocean access. So, the Kurdistans, helped or supported by the Kazakhs, they declare war on Lebanon, and then soon, Lebanon's taken over. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty with Lebanon, and we see full annexation by the Kurds. So the next thing that Kazakhstan will want to do is try to get rid of the Arabian Peninsula, or to control it themselves. So what they do is that they declare war on Kuwait, and then soon they start entering their territory. So Saudi Arabia sees this, and they declare war. So, with the Saudis a little bit more stronger, they liberate Kuwait and start a push into the Kazakhstan territory. But with the push of this also means that the Kurds also join the war. So, the Kurdistans are able to liberate this part of Kazakhstan, making them encircled, and then soon they're wiped out. And then next, they start going down, and with the Saudis already captured, they start going down with ease, and then soon Saudi Arabia falls. And then since they're there, they might as well declare war on Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, Oman, Yemen, and Jordan. So then with this, they're wiped out instantly. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty. Next, they would want to take out their strong opponent, which is China. So they go over to Mongolia, and they send them an ultimatum. And then with Mongolia now wanting to become annexed by the Kazakhs, because they're not even bordering, they do decide that they do want access to the ocean and to make China gone. So then with this, Mongolia reluctantly accepts the ultimatum and be fully annexed. Next, they declare war on China. And then with this, with the massive advantage of barely any troops in western China, they start in a massive front line. But then, whenever they reach to the end of Tibet, they do meet a little bit of resistance from the Chinese. And then with some people going over to the East Mongolian side, they do advance a little bit, going into a bit of Manchuria, and then soon with a little bit of spearhead poking out, they are able to threaten Beijing. And Taiwan decides to get in the war. But then eventually the Kazakhs see this, and then they also declare war on Taiwan. So, for the first time, the Chinese and the Taiwanese will be working together to defeat the Kazakhs. But the Taiwanese get there late, and then soon the Chinese lose a lot more territory, and then soon Manchuria now goes to Kazakhstan, Beijing falls, they fall. And then a few months later, Taiwan also falls. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty. We see that half of China got annexed, while the rest of the Chinese territory got into a puppet state alongside with Taiwan. So then, right then and there, they decide that they will want to go after more countries to gain more ocean access. So they declare war on Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and Myanmar. So with these four at the same time, they are able to liberate a little bit of China, but that was just pushed back. And then a front line happens. And then soon Vietnam falls, Laos falls, Cambodia falls, Thailand falls, Myanmar falls. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty. We see that the rest of the Chinese territory plus Taiwan got fully annexed, and these four countries got annexed also. So with them realizing that India is the only one here, they would want them to declare war on them instead of Kazakhstan declaring war on India. So they declare war on Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. So with the Kazakhs already entering in here in Bangladesh, the Indians see this, and then eventually they declare war. And then with them already at their borders, they start a massive invasion. Soon Nepal falls, Bhutan falls, Bangladesh officially falls. So India is all alone, and then eventually their capital is gone, and then soon they surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty. So once again we see the full annexation of India, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. So with this, they decide that they will want to go after two more countries, and that is in the Korean Peninsula. They both declare war on North Korea and South Korea. But Japan sees this, and they also join the war to aid the South. So with the North Koreans already falling, and then eventually South Korea is retreated into this island, and then eventually South Korea is gone. And with many naval landings in Japan, in the northern island, and in the south, and then eventually another one here, and eventually Japan surrounded, Tokyo falls, and then they surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty. So here's the peace treaty. We see that the Korean Peninsula is now fully annexed by the Kazakhs, and Japan is into a puppet state. So then with this, the Kazakhstan decides that they will want to conclude their empire after conquering a lot of Asia, technically all of Asia. So then they decide that they also grant full independence to Kurdistan. So with that, they decide to conclude their empire. And hopefully y'all liked the video, and I'll see you on the next one.